Picture this. It's a tiny, incredibly common moment. It happens on sidewalks like millions of times a day. You are walking a dog on a leash, and suddenly the dog just stops dead.
Right. And not because it's, being stubborn.
Exactly. It's because the world has just opened up right there on the ground, like a catch of soil, a tree trunk, or an invisible scent message left by another animal.
Yeah, an entire landscape.
Yeah, the dog lowers its head, fully absorbed, just reading this rich, urgent, invisible landscape. But what does the human do?
The human waits about half a second, sighs, and yanks the leash. Like, come on, we don't have time.
Right, the noose tightens, the dog gives up, and the mystery is just left behind, and we don't even think about it. But in that tiny split-second exchange, there is this massive philosophical assumption being made. Like, who decides what matters?
Yeah, who has the right to stop, to be curious?
I mean, and are you sharing a walk with another being, or are you simply moving an object through the world for your own convenience?
It's the assumption that the human schedule simply, outranks the dog's entire experience of the world.
Absolutely. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at a stack of excerpts from a book called The Crown That Keeps Us Deaf and Blind. It's by Kriger. And our mission today is to fundamentally rethink our place in the natural world.
And what makes Kriger's work so compelling is her highly original premise about how we justify our behavior toward everything else living on this planet.
Yeah, she looks at history and isolates this massive cultural shift. For centuries, human beings justified dominating the earth through this religious doctrine, often called the Great Chain of Being.
Right. The story was that a creator placed us above the beasts, handed us the keys to the estate, We weren't animals. We were higher divine beings. So we ruled.
But then the Enlightenment and Darwin came along. The scientific revolution forced us to drop that religious doctrine. We accepted the biological reality that we are, in fact, just animals.
Cousins to the apes.
It's exactly. Woven into the exact same evolutionary fabric as everything else. We dropped the divine permission slip. But we kept the privilege anyway.
We did. We announced loudly that we are just animals, yet we continue to act like lords of the earth.
And Kriger calls this the borrowed crown. I love that phrase. It exposes this massive, glaring contradiction in modern human thought. If we truly are just animals among animals, we have no inherent natural right to a throne.
No. I mean, a lion doesn't claim dominion over an antelope. It just hunts for survival and rests. It doesn't pave over the savannah.
Right. But if we do still secretly believe we are higher beings, possessing greater reason and moral agency, well then everything we know about ethics dictates that being higher means bearing a heavier burden of responsibility, not holding a license for tyranny.
Yeah, like a strong person living in a house full of vulnerable people is morally obligated to protect them, not exploit them. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. We want the biological alibi of being just animals when we act selfishly, but we demand the divine rank of kings when we want to control the world around us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Krieger's ultimate goal here isn't actually to figure out how to humanize animals.
Which is usually what we do in these discussions.
Right, totally. Her completely inverted original premise is that we need to figure out how to humanize ourselves.
Because we've spent our entire history trying to justify this borrowed crown by measuring animal intelligence against our own. We operate on the assumption that intelligence is this single vertical biological ladder, and we just so happen to sit at the very top.
Reading Krieger's text, I kept thinking of this analogy. It's like designing a race that consists entirely of doing long division.
Oh, I love this.
Right? You enter yourself and you enter a horse.
Yeah.
You win handily, obviously, and then you declare yourself the biologically superior creature in all respects.
It's a rigged game. Kriger replaces that old vertical ladder of life image with something much more scientifically accurate. A forest?
A forest of minds.
Yes. Intelligence is not a single staircase. It's a vast, branching profusion of different ways of being alive and entirely different ways of processing the world. We are just one leaf on one branch. To understand the world, we have to look at the other branches and recognize their distinct genius.
And the case studies she pulls into the book to illustrate this forest are just mind-blowing. Like, let's look at the octopus.
Oh, the octopus. It represents an evolutionary path so divergent from our own that scientists often joke it's the closest thing to an alien intelligence we will ever study.
It's wild. Our last common ancestor with the octopus lived roughly 600 million years ago. It was essentially a tiny, simple flatworm.
Right. And from that worm, Our branch developed a centralized nervous system, like a brain encased in bone at the top of the spine. But the octopus branch did something completely different.
They didn't put their brain in one place.
No, they distributed it. An octopus has about 500 million neurons, but more than half of them are located in its arms.
It's so crazy to think about.
It is. Those arms don't just send signals to a central brain for processing. The arms themselves can independently taste, touch, and, in a very real sense, think.
So if an octopus arm is severed, it can still react to stimuli. Right.
Yes, it can move and even grasp for food for a short time. They are essentially operating with a localized network of autonomous subbrains that collaborate to navigate the world.
And with that decentralized, boneless nervous system, they are solving complex physical puzzles. Like the book describes them opening sealed jars from the inside. But what really shocked me was the emotional processing.
The grudges.
Yes, the sources mention well-documented accounts of octopuses holding grudges. They will actually wait day after day for a specific keeper they dislike to walk by, just to drench that one person with a well-aimed jet of water.
While leaving every other human completely dry.
Wait, really? Just that one person?
Just that one person. Think about the mechanics of what that requires. A creature whose mind is literally spread throughout its limbs is recognizing an individual human face, a species entirely foreign to its own, memorizing that face, associating it with a negative emotional state, storing that memory, and executing a delayed, premeditated physical retaliation.
Oh, wow.
That is not a biological reflex machine. That is a conscious entity interacting with its environment.
That is a someone.
Yeah.
And, if the octopus is an alien branch of the forest, the elephant is a deeply terrestrial, deeply emotional one.
Absolutely.
The details in the text about how they experience grief actually stopped me in my tracks. When an elephant comes across the bones of another elephant, even when it didn't know, it stops.
The entire herd grows completely quiet.
Yeah, and they use the highly sensitive tips of their trunks to gently trace the skull, the jaw, the tusks. They physically mourn.
And that profound emotional depth is inextricably tied to their greatest evolutionary survival tool, which is the long memory. Kriger points out that an older matriarch isn't just a leader. She is a living, breathing library for her herd. The hippocampus of an elephant, the part of the brain associated with emotion and spatial memory, is massive and incredibly complex.
And so during a terrible drought, that older female can access a spatial map from 30 years prior.
Exactly. To locate a distant, obscure waterhole she visited just once as a calf. Her memory literally saves the entire herd from starvation.
Which, that casts the poaching of older elephants for their tusks in a much darker light. You aren't just killing a large animal, you are burning down an unwritten library that the younger generations completely depend on to survive the changing climate.
It's devastating. And to bring this back to you, the listener, navigating your own life, imagine for a second that a committee of dolphins decided to design the ultimate intelligence test for humans.
Okay.
But their criteria for genius are based on your ability to hold your breath for 20 minutes while simultaneously mapping a three-dimensional, pitch-black underwater trench purely by echolocation.
I would definitely fail that.
We all would. You'd fail miserably. But failing a test designed by a dolphin doesn't make you an idiot. It just means your evolutionary branch didn't adapt to do that.
So, if these animals are so brilliantly adapted to their own lives in this forest of minds, why do we constantly demand that they prove their intelligence by learning our language?
Right.
Like, why is human symbolic language the benchmark for whether a creature deserves respect?
It's a deeply ingrained asymmetry in how we view the world. We constantly test animals to see if they can cross into our symbolic domain, but we consider it beneath us to put in the effort to cross into theirs. We expect them to meet us on our terms.
I do have to push back on that a bit, though. We spend massive amounts of time training our dogs. We teach horses complex verbal and physical commands to compete in equestrian sports. We throw massive celebrations in the media when a chimpanzee learns human sign language. Isn't that proof of a great relationship?
You would think so, right?
Yeah, isn't that the definition of beautiful cross-species communication? Like, we are reaching out.
Well, what's fascinating here is Kriger's sharp distinction between commanding and conversing.
Okay, commanding versus conversing.
Yes. True leadership in any relationship, whether human or animal, must be given by the follower. It cannot be taken.
Oh, that's powerful.
When we train animals primarily using leverage, like by controlling their access to food, their freedom of movement, or applying physical pressure until they yield, we are extracting obedience. We aren't building trust.
Wow.
We are simply proving that we possess the structural power to make them uncomfortable until they comply with our schedule.
Leverage versus trust. We are confusing compliance with connection. That makes me think of Alex.
Oh, Alex the Gray Parrot, arguably one of the most famous animal cognition subjects in history.
Yeah, Alex is famous because he didn't just mimic sounds. He demonstrated actual cognitive understanding of human concepts.
Exactly.
Dr. Irene Pepperberg worked with him, and he could look at a tray of random objects and verbally tell you their colors, their shapes, the materials they were made of.
He even grasped the abstract concept of none.
Which is incredible. He could look at two identical objects, and when asked what the difference was, say none. Grasping the absence of a trait is incredibly difficult. I mean, human children struggle with the concept of zero.
It is a staggering scientific marvel to map human symbolic logic onto an avian brain. But Kriger asks us to look closely at the tragic beauty hidden inside that marvel.
The asymmetry of effort.
Yes.
Alex spent 30 years of his long life working incredibly hard, day in and day out, to cross the void into our world. He was operating a system of meaning that no parrot in the wild was ever evolutionarily meant to use. He met us entirely on our ground.
And the profound tragedy is that humanity never made a comparable systemic effort to learn his language. We just demanded he learn ours so we could measure his worth.
It's so sad when you think about it that way. His last words perfectly encapsulate that one-sided journey.
They really do.
On the night he died, his researcher was leaving the lab, and Alex said to her what he always said, "You be good, I love you."
He made the whole crossing toward us.
Yeah. It's genuinely heartbreaking when you sit with the realization that we are the ones standing still.
But Kriger doesn't leave us without hope, though. She provides a remarkable counterexample in the text to demonstrate that relationships without mastery are actually possible.
Right, the story of the African honeyguide bird.
Yes, it shows what happens when we drop the borrowed crown.
So the honeyguide is a wild bird with a massive biological appetite for beeswax, but it physically lacks the strength to break into wild beehives. So over generations, it has struck this incredible bargain with human honey hunters in certain parts of Africa.
And the mechanics of this mutualism are beautiful. The human makes a very specific traditional acoustic call, a sound passed down through generations.
Okay.
The bird hears it, recognizes the intent, and flies ahead, literally guiding the human across the landscape, tree by tree, to a hidden bee's nest.
So they work together.
Exactly. The human uses smoke to pacify the bees, opens the hive, and takes the honey. But the crucial mechanism of trust here is that the human always leaves the wax for the bird.
Neither party owns the other. The bird isn't wearing a collar, it isn't kept in a cage, it can fly away at any moment.
Right.
It's a relationship sustained across centuries simply because the humans reliably keep their side of the bargain. It's cooperation based on mutual benefit, not command based on leverage.
Because we generally rely so heavily on command, and because we demand obedience in our language, we render ourselves completely deaf to the animals when they are speaking to us in theirs.
We just tune them out.
We ignore their subtle communications until those communications escalate into a problem for us.
We ignore their body language.
Animals are communicating constantly. But Kriger introduces what is perhaps the most profound psychological insight in the entire book. She argues that the way we treat animals exercises the exact same moral muscle as how we treat vulnerable human beings.
See, that is a massive claim. If I'm ignoring my dog's body language, how does that translate to human morality?
It fundamentally starts with the concept of no. The capacity of one living being to refuse another and have that refusal honored is the absolute bedrock of all respect.
And animals refuse us constantly.
You see it everywhere once you look for it.
Yeah, like the dog at the vet aggressively tucking its tail and trembling. Or a cat flattening its ears and hissing before it lashes out. Or a horse planting its feet and refusing to step into a dark metal trailer.
They are screaming no in their physical language. But human beings have a terrible habit of assuming that if an animal isn't actively fighting back, like if it is simply silent and still, that means consent.
Which it totally doesn't.
Silence is rarely consent. More often than not, the animal is experiencing a psychological state called learned helplessness.
Oh, wow.
Its nervous system has realized that its no will be overridden by superior human power anyway. So to conserve energy and survive, the brain shuts down the fight or flight response. The animal freezes.
And we read that freeze as submission and obedience. We confuse a shattered will with a good attitude. So how does this cross over into human relationships?
So what does this all mean? Whenever a friction or a conflict arises, we silently ask ourselves a question: whose convenience wins? When we consistently override an animal's silent no, simply because they can't fight back, or because they lack the legal standing to sue us, we are exercising a specific neural pathway.
We're treating our brains.
Yes. We are training ourselves to believe that if we possess the structural power, our convenience trumps another being's lived reality. Kriger's argument is that this is the exact same moral muscle we flex when we exploit a desperate employee who can't afford to quit.
Oh, I see.
It's the same muscle we use when we ignore a child's bodily boundaries because we're the adult. It's the muscle that expects anyone weaker to simply absorb our demands.
The muscle of domination. If you spend your life training at one room of your house, you don't magically switch it off when you walk into another room. Your brain is wired to default to power over empathy.
Exactly.
There's this brilliantly mundane example in the text about the supermarket shopping cart that perfectly captures this underlying disposition.
Ah, yes, the shopping cart theory of morality.
Right. You are in the parking lot. You finish unloading your groceries into your trunk. No one is watching you. There are zero legal or social consequences if you just abandon the cart right there, blocking a parking space and forcing a minimum wage worker to hunt it down.
Right.
But if you take the extra 90 seconds to walk it back to the corral, you are revealing something fundamental about your internal architecture. You are actively acknowledging that you are a participant in a shared, interconnected existence.
You are recognizing that the world does not end at the exact boundary of your own immediate desire.
If you abandon it, you are treating the external world as mere raw material designed for your own convenience. It's the exact same underlying psychological disposition, whether you are dealing with a borrowed tool, a shopping cart, an anxious pet, or a subordinate at work.
Right.
Like, do you recognize the independent, valid reality of the world outside yourself, or is everything and everyone just props on your stage?
Kriger asks us to reflect deeply on our own daily frictions. When you, the listener, are interacting with a pet that is clearly afraid, or a colleague at work who is hesitant about a project, do you force compliance simply through your inherent power and authority? Or do you take the time to explain what's happening, to reduce their fear, and to actually earn their trust?
Predictability is a form of mercy.
That's beautifully said. When you warn a creature, human or otherwise, before you act, you grant it dignity. You tell it that its experience matters.
It totally shatters the conventional idea of what it means to be an animal lover. Anna Kriger's central thesis is that our ultimate goal should never be to humanize animals by projecting our specific emotional traits onto them.
They don't need our traits.
No, they are already whole, complete beings, brilliantly adapted to their own specific place in the forest of minds.
The urgent, pressing goal is to humanize ourselves.
To humanize ourselves by actively rising above our own greed, our own impatience, and this stubborn, outdated assumption of human supremacy. We have to make a conscious, daily shift from an ownership model, where the world is our property to exploit, to a stewardship model, where power is a profound responsibility.
And if we pull back and connect this micro behavior to the macro picture, it leads to a truly provocative thought to leave you with today.
Okay, let's hear it.
In the latter half of the book, Kriger discusses the tragedy of the commons. It's the classic economic concept where a shared resource, like a public pasture, is inevitably destroyed because every individual acts selfishly.
Right, taking just a little bit more for their own flock until the whole ecological system collapses.
Everyone treats the shared world as private material. Now think about the tragedy of the commons in the context of the moral muscle we've been discussing. What if the exact same psychological mechanism that allows you to needlessly crush a spider or to impatiently yank a dog's leash just to shave 30 seconds off your walk? Wait, let me rephrase. What if that is the exact same psychological mechanism that will ultimately determine whether our species survives the global climate crisis?
Oh, well, if the micro fails, the macro fails.
If we, as a supposedly advanced species, cannot learn to restrain our own power when dealing with a single helpless creature right at our feet, how can we possibly expect to possess the massive collective restraint required to restructure our global economy and save the entire planet we all share?
That is heavy.
Every time we interact with the natural world, we are making a choice. Are we, in our quiet daily lives, training the moral muscle of stewardship? Or are we meticulously training the muscle of our own extinction?
It all comes back to that split second on the sidewalk, when the dog stops to smell the earth, reading a landscape invisible to you, and you feel that familiar urge to yank the leash and say, "We don't have time."
Just take a breath.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe, it's worth pausing, letting them read the world. Because who decides whose experience matters? We do, every single day.